So traveling and getting on, especially if the engine makers and the automobiles and things start crashing,
which they are.
It's going to be really expensive to travel.
And it is.
And most people are going to start centralizing and trying to use the internet, which will become the medium, but it'll be also a more controlled device.
But it's like old, governing bodies like the Canada Post, for instance, or just the Postman General in the United States. They're going to have to recoup some losses because of the internet.
Going to.
Well, they're doing it already. But I mean, it's like you say, talking about a postage stamp.
Yep.
Listen, we pay our fees on a monthly basis for the internet.
Yep.
And there's going to be these extra surcharges on top. But it's not because it's necessary to keep the internet flowing. It's necessary to keep these old institutes from
or
dying
people,
off.
Whoever's involved, it costs so much to get involved, you're going to have to pass the prices on. It's going on. But there'll be a place where it's almost like Brave New World, where you have this higher society that has all the access, and you have the people who don't fit into it have their other world. It's like there's almost like two different levels of existence.
Is that what the stars
Yes,
talk about?
You could take the stars. You can push anything through the stars. You can push Born Again. You can push anything through a language. It's a language.
Right.
You can be scientific. You can be mystical. And it just depends what you're interested in.
Okay.
And to me, I don't watch the newspaper every day. I don't watch the news every day because it drives me crazy.
Well, it's miserable.
So like I'm more trying to relate to each person as individuals and just meet people one-on-one like that. And if you see someone struggling, how come? Mm-hmm. Like, what's the biggest disease in life?
Probably depression.
Broken heart.
Sure. Okay. All right.
You take my arm, don't take my heart.
Right.
So when you go through emotional traumas where your confidence, your faith in yourself gets shattered, and you have to rebuild, that's a major struggle.
Yeah.
Then outwardly, we have our famines, we have things, people are living and dying, people are starving, there's a lot of injustices that need to be addressed. But on a personal level, people fall in love and they get heartbroken. And we wake up. And part of that's part of a spiritual path. Part of it, we go through worldly things, and sooner or later we're going to die anyway. So sooner or later we have to wake up spiritually, whether we're doing it kicking or streaming or not.
Right.
So I feel there's meaning in all of this. Everything we go through has a certain relevance. The challenges we get, I've learned more from my enemies than my friends. Because they challenge me, and I'm going to take the challenge. I'm going to prove I'm doing what's better. And I've grown tremendously through those type of things. So we have a lot of judgments about how it's supposed to be for our kids, whatever. Some of the kids have the most difficult times early, are the greatest people, are the most accomplished people when they're older.
Right.
Some people have the most buffered lives, end up not doing that much. It's really hard to judge. When you look at a chart, you're getting a standard of how somebody is, what stress patterns they have, how they function, and when they're going to be up and when they're going to be down. And if you see you're going to have an up time, you can align yourself to it. I had one client come to me, young man, and this some time ago. He tried to swim the English Channel a few times and failed. So he came to me and said, will I ever have a chance? Will I ever be able to do it? So we worked out a time, and he said, well, he swam and he successfully made it across. So it was, not meaning anything to most people, but it was a big thing for him because it was like he'd worked to try and do it his whole life and almost was at a point of giving up, but he managed to pull it off. And sometimes he tried and the waves were bad. Sometimes he tried, it's just difficult timing.
Yeah.
And when you can adjust your timing, that's huge. I had one client, owner of a big hotel chain. Okay. He paid me big money to calculate his chart for every minute across every day. He wasn't worried about dealing with the unions. He wasn't worried about business. He had me do this for one reason, and one reason only. He wanted to know the minute he could call home and not get hassled by his wife.
Which would have a big bearing on how he operated his day.
It was the only thing that would set him off for the day. So we had a 12-year relationship until he retired. But it was a really practical use. It worked well for him.
And did it work well for his relationship with his wife?
They're still together. They managed. I don't know what happened when he retired.
So let's talk about some of who your clients are.
12. I had 12 horses.
There you go.
Planned a racing career. Because a horse can only run so many races, or a trotter can only run so many races, and if you keep them out of the accident-prone times, and you work them properly, it makes a huge difference.
So the animal kingdom.
So I had a few like that. That was one client for, again, 10 or 12 years until he passed away, and then things changed. But I get a lot of people with problem kids. They're teenagers, they're doing drugs. What's happening? What's going on? How do you deal with this?
Right.
I mean, if you have 3 kids, and the oldest one's going out and doing crack or doing some difficult thing, you got to lock the door because you got to protect the other two,
Right.
even if that threatens the other one. But there's things where so many things can make us sad. We get expectations, we get hurt. We have to let go. And what do? And when you get in puzzles like that, astrology is not the answer. It's a plan. It gives you a standard that you might be able to go for. It's like it reinforces who you might be.
Right.
If it's done right, and may give you some options to take. Sometimes something falls apart and you're supposed to go back to school. Sometimes a whole business falls apart and you can rebound, and in 2 years you're up and building up something bigger. It's just different for different people at different times. So when you're looking at horoscopes or predictions, there's some things that happen to people just for the age we are. We go through our puberty, we have a midlife crisis. We have certain things that happen around the same time for everyone. Then there's certain things that happen to your sun sign. Everything happens this Aries at this time, or Taurus at these times, and you see the ups and downs then. But then there's things that are unique to the time of day and unique to your own personal situation. And this texture of different cycles of information, I'm like the conductor that reads the music and each person's dancing their life. They're still going to dance their way. But sometimes, if you know they put on a tango, if it's only, you might fake it for a minute, but if it's going to go on for 10 minutes and you don't know what to do, and you're going to get off the floor.
Yeah, right.
That's useful to know. Like that. So do you hang in with the business or do you let it go?
Right, because I think a lot of people do struggle with that very thing. I mean, this concept of time that we do have, and people do actually struggle through these horrible times when they really should, like you say, just kind of let it go.
Yeah. Well, there's puzzles. Like suppose someone's in a marriage and not happy.
Right.
They got their kids. The kids are starting school. They're not in love. They got their kids. They don't want to let go of the kids. They're both in. They're trying to deal with it. This is a complicated scenario. But it's one where you get useful advice when you start saying, well, the kids are going to go through this. Parents are going to go through, like when you look at a horoscope, the horoscope of a child or a person is the situation between your parents at the moment you're born. So you have the chart as your character. They're acting out the myth or the psyche of who you are.
Right.
So if you have a deceptive chart or a confusing chart, it's because your parents weren't being honest with each other. So if your parents want to get their kids honest, they got to figure out how to be honest with themselves.
Right.
But it's a texture that we grow through. And we grow up and we become more and more individual. We're doing things more and more ourselves. By the time we have our own sexual experiences or we start getting out, we don't do that with our parents' permission.
No.
Things happen, and then we're out trying to wing it to see what my life is going to be and what we're going to do. We don't know. And we go through 2 or 3 options, and then finally we think, well, maybe there's a better way. I mean, most people don't come to astrology until they've had a heartbreak or something's gone down this. There's got to be another way. Maybe there's a plan here. Maybe there's something here. And then it's really useful. But I'm submerged in it. I've been using the language for 40 years. So it's what's common sense to me is may be radical to someone else. It's not against a religious belief or anything like that. Every religion's using astrology. They make their calendar, they make their holidays. That Easter comes the first Sunday after the full moon, after the equinox. That's astrology. These things, it's just concepts. It's like concepts of prejudice that are in there that isn't really real. 12 wise men, the wise men followed the stars. Defying Christ, the wise men were astrologers. It isn't threatening to, astrology is not God. It's not, we all have our spiritual being.
Right.
It's how we live life and the texture of our egos in life and how we're navigating through the textures and how we deal with the stress and tensions of things. It's like weather. It's like a mechanic of dealing with things. But it's really useful to know, especially when you run into a problem and you don't know what to do. Phew. Call Ghostbusters or call the astrologer. It has that sort of scenario.
So is it good for, we don't have a lot of time left either, Robin, but
Okay.
For individuals, obviously you're saying it's a great thing to do, but what about things like a company?
Oh, yeah, I've hired staff for a company and work in personnel, when to make the moves, when to start a company, when to start a marriage, to get these dates and to do things. That's all part of it. It's when you get interested, the bug bites you and it just takes over and you find it really interesting. And then you study it. But until then, you can get information and find uses about it without having no astrology. It's not a psychic thing. But finding a good astrologer is no different than finding a good lawyer or a good doctor. There's a lot of people out there that know a little bit.
Okay, let me ask you just a quick question before we go. What sign is Canada?
Cancer.
And how's the chart look for Canada?
Not so good for we got difficulties. Canada and the States both have difficulties for the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
But if somebody wants to get to me, they can get to my website.
That's thewakingdream.net.
Wakingdream.net,
Okay.
and I have about my classes, my chart, getting a chart done, anything like that. So, I'm inspired by astrology, but it's a language that I use. I can use it to understand this religion or that religion or this thing. It doesn't take away from it.
Right.
No?
And are you based in Toronto?
I'm in Aurora, but I've pretty well been based in Toronto for the last 30, 40 years.
Okay. Well, Robin, it's been great to meet you and to have you on and to
Thank
have
you.
this chat. And
Nice to be here.
we could probably do it all day long because this stuff really, I find it fascinating.
Absolutely.
But we have to go. So,
Okay.
Robin, thanks so much. TheWakingDream.net's the website, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So we're going to take a bit of a break now. We're going to come back with Pam Killeen, Fixing a Broken Brain and other stuff coming up right after this here on liquidlunch.thatchannel.com.